Kathy's here, I think. Yep, Kathy's here. Yep, she's waving. Yep, she's here.
I don't know why it's not
Parma
up there.
Here.
and Reardon.
Here.
Okay, we have, I think we're good to go, sir.
Excellent, thank you. Motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Schuler,
Second.
and Melody, and Kathy. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. And we have minutes from September 14th that need to get approved. I think everybody got those online. Debbie,
What? Move to approve?
we have both approved. Thank you, Debbie. And Melody. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, minutes approved. Regular business. First thing is consideration of possible action on the review and award of the contract KI Convention Center 2-21 lighting upgrades. They're looking to approve the award to Elmstar Electric in the amount of $383,521. Any discussion on this, Neil or Cheryl? Cheryl, I think it was right.
Yep, actually, the first two agenda items are both concerning the KI Convention Center. We're doing upgrades to the lighting and the AV. And we actually bid them together earlier this year, I believe, and the bid came back really high. So we decided to split them and bid them at a later date. And they actually came back really good for us. So this first agenda item is lighting upgrades. Just so you know, right now we have $2,117,848 in our maintenance account for the KI Convention Center. So the first one is like, and you saw in the report, it listed the things that were happening with the upgrade to the lighting, LEDs, replacing of fixtures. There's also some work that's going to be done kind of in the main areas, like, those those phone little booths they have,
Yes.
cubbies, we're getting rid of those. People aren't using those. So we're doing a little bit more of those upgrades. But any questions particularly about the bid? Trista Hobbs is here from Public Works. But otherwise, it's been reviewed by Public Works and we recommend moving forward.
Here, I have a question,
Please.
Chair. I'm just curious, of the two projects you had mentioned, they had been bid together previously, you separated them out, and then as we'll see in the next one, Zizi was low for the AV. Any concerns about having two different contractors doing those two contracts? I mean, I'm sure they're contractors that have probably worked together before, both, longstanding firms in the area, reputable contractors, et cetera. Just curious if you have any concerns about that.
I think Trista, if you could answer that.
Yeah, we, like you were saying, we've worked with both of those firms, both reputable contractors. We'll be coordinating all of that work with the KI. So on DPW's behalf, we don't have any concerns with two separate contractors.
Good.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for those lighting upgrades to Elmstar Electric, including those three alternates for the total of $383,521.
I'll second.
Melody, a second by Kathy. Questions or comments? And not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make a note that Alderdorf has joined us. She is here
Yeah.
in the meeting, so.
Welcome, Alderdorf.
Thank you.
Number two, consideration of possible action to review and award of the contract of the KI Convention Center 3-21 AV upgrades to Franco Zizi Construction in the amount of $248,516.
Oh, same story, except this is the AV portion of that bid that's going through. A lot of work is going to be done in the ballrooms, A, B, and C, replacing speakers and soundboards. This equipment in this section of the KI is about 20 years old, so it's got a lot of problems. So it'll be good to have all of that upgraded. The balance will be less than $2,117,000 since you awarded the last one. So,
Right.
but we still have, I think, enough money in that account to do these direly needed repairs
Right.
and improvements.
In regard to the construction account, on a monthly basis, we get the additional dollars in there, right, from the hotel?
We do.
Yep. All right. Questions or comments? And on this particular award?
No, I'll make a motion there as well to approve the contract for the AV upgrades to Zize Construction in the amount of $248,516.
Motion made by Melody. And a second. Second by Kathy?
Or Barb.
Barb,
Barb. Okay. I'm sorry. Any questions or comments in regard to the motion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Good, that's gonna be some good work. That's gonna upgrade the KI and make it even more
Absolutely.
available and functional, if you will. Number 3, consideration of possible action to award a contract for architectural services to Bernard Schober in the amount of $49,000 related to a shelter and restroom facility at Light Park. Is this you, Cheryl, or
I'll take this one, Mr. Chair. This is working with Director Dan Ditchite from the Parks Department, who's also online here, looking to get some design work done for a shelter and restroom facility at Light Park. This is regarding an opportunity we have for some TIF funding that we have available from TID 5 to get this project moving forward. We are under a time constraint on this one to get this moving forward to this fall in order to qualify and be able to utilize the funds. They have to be committed by the end of this year. So we are interested in proceeding with it on as quickly as possible. I think there is a couple of alders who may be wanting to comment on this here as we go forward, but this would be similar design work to what has been done in a couple of other park facilities. Also, this is a shelter and restroom facility at Light Park specifically. It's kind of what we're looking at here. These were the bids that were received. And with that, I don't know if there may be Director Ditchite, if you have some additional comments on exactly what we're looking at here for this project, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I had some discussions with both the mayor and Alder Johnson in regards to this. I think there's an interest right now to just temporarily put this on hold. So that would be my recommended motion, is to hold on this item for now. And that'll give us a little bit of time to do some thinking about the master plan and the strategic plan for the park as a whole. And so I already have some meetings set up with Alder Johnson, Alder Scannell, and the mayor to begin those discussions in the near future. And so it makes sense to just put this on hold right now. But I don't know if Alder Johnson would like to expand on that.
Neil, would they put some of these funds in jeopardy, like you mentioned earlier, if we do put it on hold, or did I miss something?
Certainly, if we delay too long, Gary, that could be a potential problem. But I think Director Ditchite and Alder Johnson are both aware of the deadlines. So I think I'm confident that they're planning on proceeding fast enough that we could bring something back here, hopefully maybe even in November, and get something approved. So I think they're both aware of the time constraints.
Okay. And how long are bids available? In other words, these particular bids, how long can they wait?
I believe that there's these quotes are good for 90 days.
Oh, okay. So that doesn't seem to be an issue. Alderman Johnson, are you aboard?
Yeah, and I think Director Schulte, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have until the end of the year to commit those funds.
We do, but in order to commit them, there may be some actions required after just approving the process going forward. So ideally, we'd like to kind of bring this back to this body, I think in November, Alder Johnson, if at all possible.
Yep, and I think our meeting is on October 22nd, so we'll be able to do that.
Perfect.
Okay. And the reason for the holding them up is that you want to look at this from a bigger picture? Is that correct?
Yes.
Bigger planning picture? Okay, that makes sense.
I really support that direction. I think Light is a really special property, and I'm glad that we're taking time to look at it holistically. So I would, if we need to make a motion, I'd make a motion to hold off on that.
Thank you, Bridget.
I'd like to second it, but just if it would be to hold until November, would Bridget be willing to change that to hold until our November meeting?
Okay.
And then Kathy wanted to second it too. I don't care who seconds it, but either one.
Well, your addition though makes some sense. Okay, so Bridget's.
I'm good with that. Okay, I'll second it then.
Okay. So motion by Bridget and second by Alderdorf that we put it on hold, but that would come back into our November meeting. Any other questions or comments in that regard? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Number 4, consideration of possible action to authorize city staff to award a contract for Legends District Sidewalk and Lighting Project to the qualified low bidder not to exceed $425,000.
Yeah, this is not our usual process. We have done this with this body, one on a public works project previously this summer due to some time constraints. Similarly, this is a project we would like to still get done and committed this fall. Really, weather is our big challenge here that we're kind of coming up against for this particular one. So while the engineering public works department is finalizing the actual designing and bid documents, they were hoping to be able to get those finalized and get those issued prior to coming back to this body for approval. So what they're basically doing is quoting the actual budget number and allowing staff to kind of conduct the proper bidding process and then award it to the qualified low bidder not to exceed $425,000. This has been, here's approximately the rough area that we're looking at here. This is Brett Favre Pass. This is Tony Canadeo Run. Here's Reggie Wright Way, Lombardi Avenue for folks who are interested here. This site we're looking at right here, this is where the new, hopefully the new Legacy Hotel project will be going. We're continuing discussions with them, and we'll hopefully be bringing an updated development agreement forward here yet this fall for that particular project. But this one particularly involves the installation of sidewalks here, I think primarily on the Canadeo area specifically, but then actually putting in the conduit then for a lot of the actual street lighting that will need to be going throughout the entire project area. So we're trying to beat the weather a little bit on this one as engineering is kind of finalizing up their design work. So they are requesting that RDA authorize staff to award the contract at the conclusion of the bidding process, not to if it's so long as it's below $425,000 and is successfully completed all the bidding requirements.
You expect quite a few bidders on this one, Neil?
I think so. I don't know if we have anybody from Public Works on the call for this one. I think there will be some interest in this one. This is a large enough project that I think there will probably draw some interest. This is a good project for a year-end kind of project for someone to fill in and just get one last job in before the snow flies. This should be, I think this will actually be a competitive project.
Okay.
Neil, are you building conduit in there for fiber as well?
That at this point, I'd have to consult with Public Works. At this point, we're really primarily focusing just on the on the street lighting. So none of the other utilities are being looked at this current time. But I think that would be the time we want to certainly take a look at fiber for that area. I know the Legacy Hotel for sure is interested in having some quality access for sure. We've had that discussion with them. So we're trying to figure out exactly how to. One of the delays in this entire process was essentially. I guess a previous mayor kind of directed some of those when the street was reconstructed to kind of primarily just be focused on moving traffic and that was the primary concern. As staff had kind of come back now to this and looking at it from a planning and park standpoint, trying to identify where the sidewalks are going to go, what sort of other amenities were going to be in this area in terms of landscaping, other utilities. In fact, Bridget, to your point, there wasn't really a lot of consideration done when that initial design was done. It was really kind of put the focus of kind of moving traffic on game days was kind of really what the process was. So that we're kind of coming back in now at this point, trying to retrofit into this project a little bit to try to make all those things work.
I think just as you look forward, though, even for moving traffic, the more you can implement smart city applications, the better, right? So
absolutely. No, yes.
Yeah, even if we have to put in the conduit ourselves, that's something we might be interested in. But when you've got the sidewalks dug up, that's the time to do it.
Yeah, in this case, we just certainly missed our opportunity when the entire street was kind of dug up. Yep. That would have been the perfect time to do some of this work, but unfortunately, that was not achieved at that time. So we are kind of having to retrofit some of these improvements back into the area. So.
How did we come up with this 425,000?
That was I think that's the engineering estimate, Gary. That was in terms of what our public works guys have actually come up with their construction estimate for the project.
Okay, gotcha.
And just to remind everybody, this was actually, you guys remember earlier in the year, we moved funding from TID 7 to TID 23 specifically for this part. This is part of that particular project.
Yep. I remember that.
So that's why this contract is coming before the RDA, because this is essentially a TID funded project.
Okay. So if we approve it and we get the request for bids out, how soon could we get a decision on this? Maybe Jim has to answer that.
Yeah, I think in terms of how fast the turnaround would be, ideally, we'd actually have a report back for you coming in terms of November, but I'm not sure exactly how long the bid has to be let out for responses. Mr. Chairman, I don't know that. I don't have that information, but I can follow up and share that with everyone in terms of what we think the schedule would be, if that would be helpful.
Great. And as far as Bridget's comment, as far as putting fiber in there at the same time, or how do
Even just conduit, even if you just, I mean, I would ask that you at least broaden the scope to just ask them how much more conduit would be. It's not that usually expensive when you're doing a project like this. That'd be part of the scope.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Happy to check on that. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So ready to entertain a motion. Yeah. Usually the bids come to us and then we award them. And here, in this case, they're just saying they would award to the qualified low bidder not to exceed $425,000. I'm comfortable with that. I don't know if the rest of the committee is, but I have no problem.
Yeah, just to note, we certainly don't prefer to do it this way, Mr. Chairman. We'd much rather bring the bids in and show everybody exactly what we're looking at before asking you for approval. But again, this one, we're coming up against some winter weather here. We just want to make sure we have an opportunity to get this project in this fall.
All right.
Okay, I'll make a motion that due to time constraints, that the RDA will authorize city staff to award a contract for the Legend Sidewalk District and lighting to the qualified low bidder not to exceed $425,000.
Motion made by Kathy,
I'll second.
a second by Debbie. Any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, sing by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, number 5. Consideration of possible action to approve the recommendation of real estate subcommittee to award MF Housing Partners LLC a planning option for the development of 1100 East Walnut Street site. Melody, you must have been there. Kathy must have been there, right?
Yep.
That,
And Matt was out of town, or was he there?
Yeah, right. Matt was not available, so I don't know, Kathy, you or I can talk about, our meeting that we had. We had talked to each of the development teams that had submitted proposals. They all submitted, good proposals with great ideas. At the end of the day, we certainly would appreciate if we were able to find opportunities for all of them in our city to create development for each of them. But because we were looking at one site, we needed to, recommend one team. We recommended the team who was the team that staff also had recommended, as they had evaluated the 3 proposals based on their set criteria. From my perspective, I was very pleased with the design and their proposal from an aesthetic of it fitting into that very residential neighborhood. It was certainly, again, the mix of units that we were looking for, and we liked the team. From my perspective, EUA and Performa being a local firm, certainly appreciate that. EUA very reputable in what they do, as well as a developer from the Valley. So again, from a proximity perspective, I think they had included a local artist that they were planning to include in the project as well. There might have been another, and then Catalyst Construction. Again, I just personally have some experience with them, so I've felt very comfortable with this team, their local presence and their design, and then just that entire proposal that they put together. But like I said, we thanked all of those developers and definitely felt that they all could bring value to our community, and hoped and suggested that they continue to work with staff to be able to look at other opportunities as they provided.
right, and they also had a high number of 3 bedrooms. I think out of the 42 apartments, 12 of them were 3-bedroom. So
Excellent.
that was our recommendation.
Excellent. Appreciate Kathy and Melody's background in particular, and looking at these alternatives. And Excellent comments. Yeah, I went to the packet. It looks like a very nice project, a nice proposal. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
I do have one comment. Excuse me. The Oneida Group.
A Wise Women Gathering and Blue Line Club.
Wise Woman.
Yeah, Wise Women Gathering. I just hope that we continue to work with them and hoping to find a place for them to do their supportive housing project. The point in time that Counts Homeless showed that we have an inordinate amount of homeless Native Americans in our community. So I just hope that we continue working with that project to bring it to fruition.
I would say the staff agrees with the committee's comments on that. Yeah, all three projects were certainly very viable and brought considerable value. So we will be following up with them on a couple of other spots. I have a feeling. So
I have a meeting scheduled actually already.
See,
Yes.
leave it to Will. Exactly. Thank you, Will.
We were really pleased to have them there, and definitely both Melanie and I indicated to who heads it up.
Ganador?
No, but she wasn't the one that was there, but that we look forward to working with.
Beverly?
Yes, Beverly. Bev. So.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll entertain a motion from the real estate subcommittee.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation to award MF Housing Partners LLC a planning option for the development of 1100 East Walnut Street. Tax parcels.
All those extra ones, Kathy. You don't need to read them all off.
Okay. And the one thing is how long is the, did we say 6 months?
Thank you, Kathy. I was just going to interject. If 6 months, just because, so all three of the applicants were actually looking to apply for WIDA tax credits. So MF will not receive word until early spring. So 6 months would be an appropriate amount of time for a planning option.
A motion by Kathy. Is there a second?
Second. Alderman Dorff.
Alderman Dorff seconded. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose. Motion carried. Thanks, Melody and Kathy, for the working subcommittee that you guys did, the real estate subcommittee, and digging into this. Appreciate your efforts very much. Thank you. Number 6. Consideration of possible action to approve 2021-2022 tax incremental district affordable housing TIDAH plan.
It's our ta-da plan. Yes, Gary. Yep, right.
All right.
Ta-da. Okay.
There you go.
I know, it's very anticlimactic at that point. So you remember that we've held some TID districts open to create some funding for affordable housing.
Yes.
That happened, and we passed the policy, and that happened in April of this year. Part of that policy requires that every October, we bring to you kind of a status of where we are and what our plans are going forward for the next year. We have to submit that plan to the RDA and to the City Council for approval. So just briefly going through the plan, I attached that in the packet. Summary and revenues. I can tell you we started out from increment that was contributed from TID 7 and 8, and that brought us to $1,161,279. Out of that, we made one purchase last year, and that was for back taxes, a Brown County lot that we partnered with them on Lau for $7,730. So our balance right now in the TDA fund is $1,153,549. So right now, this is the balance. We will be closing TID 12. And so we'll get an additional amount of money coming into this account in January of 2023. And we think that will be an estimated 2.5 million that will be coming into the account. So a lot of money, more money coming down the road. We did do an allocation this year for a little bit of admin. We had staff track the time and what it took to get this TDA in place. It's very small. I think it was about 24,000 out of 1.5 million. Going forward, staff is just tracking the time and actually taking admin out of what we actually do. It's not just a percentage, in other words. So those admin costs won't be very high. We're recommending the following allocations based on what the plan calls for, what we can use the money for, and what we see as the needs and the questions we've been getting into the office. So we're looking at 600,000 for the larger multi-unit development out of the ground new build projects. We've also had some interest in conversion of underutilized space into housing. That would include, those dead areas above businesses, or looking at buildings that weren't originally housing. That's 353, 549. We have 100 people on our waiting list for home improvement loans. So we really want to add a little bit of money into the home improvement loan program. We've actually been in contact with one lender, and we're working with other ones as well. We'd like to possibly have this money matched by the private lenders in the town, so we can make this money go a little bit further. And then part of this funding is 100,000 towards acquisition or new homes in your neighborhood program. That's the funding that allows us to get those cheap lots from the county for tax foreclosures. And then it allows us to provide some subsidy to folks who want to build the new infill single families on the lots that we have to get rid of our lots. So one of the elements is if there were any adjustments on the account for inflation, cost of living, median income, market fluctuations, there really haven't been. We know the market has slowed down a little bit in real estate, and we've seen prices go down in construction costs, which is good. But other than that, we haven't made any changes to that plan. And then the last question is discussion about priority neighborhoods and where the funding will be focused. So the TDA funds can be used anywhere in the city, and that will remain the same. But our department will be, we have been focusing on the shipyard area, and we will be moving our focus into the Old North neighborhood, in that there are going to be thousands of parcels that are going to come out of the floodplain, hopefully next year when they change the FEMA maps. That will give us the ability to do, I think we have 11 vacant lots that are buildable in the Old North neighborhood that we'll be able to do new home construction, and HILP funding as well will be good for that neighborhood. But again, we take applications in regardless of where that neighborhood is. And then other sites that we're still looking at and have had questions asked on, of course, is, well, first of all, our priority is anything owned by the RDA of the city, because we want to get that tax base back on those parcels.
Yes.
But then there's also the JBS site that has some potential. We've got Monroe in Chicago that's still open as a development site. And then, of course, we've got opportunities in the shipyard area and the rail yard area. So that is the plan for next year. And that will be, if approved from RDA, will be moved to council for approval.
Looks like a good plan. You guys are giving it quite a bit of thought, and it looks like a good plan. Questions or comments?
The one comment that I have is just a caution based on where I live. And I understand that the TWC properties may be coming back for this too, but in the rail yard, we have a lot of subsidized housing. I just want to make sure we don't pile on subsidized housing all in one spot. I think that can cause issues. So I'm okay with it being on there, but I think we have to make sure we're looking at all the socioeconomics to make a healthy development.
Yep. So Bridget, you and I are on the same page.
Good.
With this. So, and we've had this discussion on the staff level as well. The TDA funding is meant to subsidize to build for affordable housing. So, but you're right, there are implications when you have a lot of units together like that. We don't want to recreate that. So that's something that we look at when we look at proposals.
Great.
Good comment, Bridget. Any other questions or comments in regard to the plan? If not,
Right, I'll make a motion then.
Alder.
Yes, I would like to make a motion, let me get my wording correct here, that we approve the 2021-22 TDA plan and forward it to the City Council for approval.
Motion by Alder, second by Kathy. Other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Good. It's a good plan. Good luck. Number 7, consideration with possible action on acceptance of a notice of transfer of ownership for 1901-1931 Main Street and authorization of a continued pay-go TID. Yes.
This is me, Mr. Chairman. This is essentially, this is Mr. Garrett Bader, and I think hopefully he's going to be joining us if he's not on already. He should be joining us here shortly. This was essentially, each development agreement we generally have requires the city be notified of ownership changes. In this case, the notice was done, but it was done, I believe, verbally with the previous director, and it was never really formalized and brought forward to the RDA for action. As staff kind of looked to approve the pay-go payment for this year, it was noted that the ownership had changed. So Mr. Bader has followed up with us, and again, he confirmed, and we did verify that there was a verbal conversation that the city was notified. It just was not done in writing, and it was not brought forward to the RDA. So other than that, this is more primarily, staff uses this as primarily an administrative effort at this point to make sure that, see if there were any questions from the RDA regarding that. It does not otherwise impact the development agreement or the remaining, probably, we estimated, I think, 2 more payments that will still go to the original developer. So outside of the sale, but so just with that, we're just requesting that the RDA accept the written notice of transfer and authorize the pay-go payment for 2021.
Okay. I remember the project, but I don't, you're right, I don't remember us having a written document in that regard. But I'm all in favor. I have no problem at all with what you're recommending here. And as you know, we all like pay-goes because that means they have to do the work before you get paid, and that's great. That's a good thing. All right, questions or comments?
I'll make a motion that we accept written notice of transfer of ownership and authorize continued payment of the pay-go incentive.
Motion by Kathy.
Second.
Second by Bridget, I believe.
Debbie.
I'm sorry. Who was second? Was it Bridget?
Debbie.
Oh, Debbie.
Debbie.
I'm sorry.
We all sound the same.
It'll be nice when we're all in live person. They can see everybody's face.
See everybody, absolutely.
But anyway, motion by Kathy, second by Debbie. Any other questions or comments in regard to the motion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Number 8, consideration of possible action on general terms relating to requests for $300,000 in TID assistance for facade improvements for East.
More, Garrett.
Yep, this is me as well, Mr. Chair. I'll take this one. This is a request, again, from Mr. Bader has been obviously very active in his redevelopment efforts out at East Town Mall.
Yeah.
Essentially, what we're looking at here is the primary buildings would be facade improvements to the primary structure. The unique aspect of kind of what we're looking at here is that this would actually, we're not anticipating the valuation of this particular improvement to specifically fund the request. There's actually 2 other newer buildings that could be constructed that we're looking at in terms of that would actually generate the increment that would actually fund the improvement on the primary building. So a couple of the outlots essentially would be constructed to fund that. So I think these are right out of your staff report that we provided to you. Some of the preliminary things, again, this is just a term sheet. So what we're going to be seeking from today is RDA to simply authorize the general direction saying we agree these are general terms. Please proceed with the development agreement to return back to this body at some point. But these are the general terms we are presenting, at least at this point, and have discussed these with Mr. Bader at this point. So I'll just run through these real quick. Submitting. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay. Submitting architectural designs for the facade improvements for RDA approval by November 4th. So we actually know, what we're providing assistance for in terms of the appearance of what the structure might look like. Obviously, required to apply for any building permits that are required. We're looking for about $1.5 million of improved facade improvement costs specifically for the project. So that would be, essentially by September of 22. apply for any required zoning approvals related to the development of a minimum of 2 new commercial developments along the ring road inside of East Town Mall. So in front of the mall, but kind of where the parking lot, and it's almost like a little frontage road right there. I think the intent of the developer is to kind of expand that and formalize that a little bit and make that function more like an actual street. In addition to the ring road itself, as well as an access directly all the way up to the mall. So we're asking for at least 2 new specific developments of 1.5 million in increment to be created. Complete construction of $2 million of additional assessable value along the internal ring road by December 31st, 2023, or just through the increase in valuation of the primary mall buildings itself. We really don't care exactly where the increment comes from as long as it happens. We would prefer to see, obviously, some of those additional buildings happen in the interior of one of those giant seas of parking. We think that's a great reuse strategy for the mall. And then obviously guaranteeing the property tax payment forward. So we're going to be making sure that we have financial assistance, basically the income, the cash flow available to fund the assistance we're providing, and then developer to pay his property taxes by July 31st of each year. Certainly no payment would go out until those taxes were fully paid on an annual basis. So then from the city standpoint, looking for the RDA to review and approve the architectural renderings, possibly on November 9th. Review zoning and building permit applications in a timely fashion for full permits in place by February of 22. Assess the improved property as of January 1, 2023, and then compare it to a base year of January 1, 2021 to kind of make just so we're basically taking the increment from this particular project is what we're going to try to count there. Beginning in 2025, we talk about it. We have presented this as an 80% of the annual increment generated each year, essentially to a maximum of $330,000. The developer has requesting $300,000 up front in terms of the city financing it. Staff is kind of countered with the overtime position at this point. There is a possibility that we can look at some additional cross funds, possibly from TID 10 is within the half mile of this particular area, that there's a possibility that between two, if there was sufficient cash available, then it's something we could consider. However, at this point, we have not ascertained if that's haven't fully projected if that's going to be the case. So staff's recommendation still is we're at this point, we're still more comfortable with the pay-as-you-go model, but the developer certainly has made his case and is making his case for possibly the city to finance that and provide that up front. He has made considerable investments. I think in terms of the letter Mr. Bader did provide, if you actually look at the overall amount of investment he has placed in the overall East Town property is certainly very impressive from an acquisition and improvement standpoint. We certainly do not discount that. And in terms of overall percentage of that investment, this is a fairly small amount compared to other projects that we've seen. But again, staff is essentially, we're confident that it definitely works on a pay-as-you-go basis for these projects. But if it doesn't, we're still not quite haven't quite fully ascertained if we can entertain an upfront financial assistance for this. And I don't know if Mr. Bader is actually on the phone at this point. If he's on the call, Garrett, are you with us?
He's here.
All right, there we go. So he is here, Mr. Chairman. If anyone you would like to have him answer any questions.
Okay, entertain a motion to open the meeting.
I'll make a motion to open the meeting.
Melody, and second by Kathy. All those in favor, sing by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so Garrett, meeting is open. Give us your side of the story.
Well, happy Tuesday. You can't see I'm wearing my Brewers shirt. Go Brewers, 4:00. They need to win today. It's not pretty if they don't. So here we go.
Priorities.
You're right.
So, as Neil said, this is part of the ongoing East Town work. The original plans for the property continue to grow. I think that's a great thing. We're up now 15 million-ish from the original 5 to 6 or so. So we're doing a lot. For those that may not have been out there recently, Fazoli's is gone. Chipotle and Cousins are coming out of the ground in their space. We just held an unveiling yesterday for Shoreline Credit Union that's going to be building in the parking lot, our first in-lot group. Permitting is in for that. So we'd like to break ground on that right after Thanksgiving, hopefully. And again, it's just adding to the overall improvement and renovation of the center. The specific request in front of you involves the reskinning of the Hobby Lobby building. As it's noted in my memo that I submitted, this has not seen substantial work since 1981. It's dated, looks terrible. We're going to make it look a lot better. And as part of that, we'll be joining in a new retailer with Hobby Lobby. Can't disclose it yet. The lease is not executed, but it will be yet another get for the center, if you will, which I've always been a big believer of. Not only does the center of the property need to look good and feel good for people to want to be there, you need the users and the operators that people want to patronize. So both efforts still ongoing here. The main reason for this ask, and because I'm proud to say that prior to this point, I've asked for nothing for Easttown of anyone of the city. A little bit different, where this was an add-on property not anticipated to originally have been purchased. And the work done to this building will not notably increase the valuation of this building, but it will allow all the external projects that we're talking about to be realized. And that's the big part here, is on improving the overall visibility of the center to bring more ancillary development. So as Neil and I had talked about, the upfront is requested. And I really hope that can come from the adjacent TID. No one is asking for the city to bond for this or do anything like that. But if those funds can be transferred from the adjacent TID to this one to accomplish it, that is hopefully the goal. Outside of that, I'll answer any questions you guys have.
So I'm sure you've seen the developer obligation list that Neil went through and the city obligations. So in concept, you agree with those?
Yeah, I mean, Neil had to twist my arm pretty hard and I was bent over and oh my gosh, but yes. It's all good. That's all good.
Could you live with a pig?
If it has to be, yes. That's not the end of the world. Again, the upfront is much cleaner for this site because of the uniqueness with this property and the valuation. But I am willing to entertain and talk with Neil and staff about other options if that's not ultimately able.
First of all, I live fairly close there, and it's so exciting to see all the improvements and the work that's going on. So I compliment you and your team on that. And you're right; they got great big backhoes and things going on right now. I by a while ago, so it's exciting to see all that transition. That is very, very exciting.
And Mr. Chair, I would just like to add the fact that in some of the comments that Mr. Bader referenced in terms of other improvements going to be able to fund those. One of the things we are looking at doing, and the mayor has already kind of given direction to staff to, is to proceed with making some pedestrian improvements across Mason Street to this particular area, kind of right where the central drive is, essentially coming into where this would be doing. So we're looking at kind of adding some significant pedestrian crossing infrastructure and pavement markings and beyond that in actual infrastructure in this particular area. So once we kind of get this kind of scheduled and moving forward and we're able to pay, do that, we'll be looking pretty quickly to start planning some of those and coordinating with Mr. Bader on his developments on the inner ring road, and then how making some of those pedestrian improvements at that time as well. So that's just one example of it. And that's a TIF project plan that's already approved in the TIF project plan. So this is actually this development is actually going to be generating a cash flow that would allow us to proceed with some of those improvements as well. So.
And which TIF would that be? Which one?
Right, the main one is, I believe, is 19. I believe that Easttown Mall is TIF 19 is the primary one here, but TID 10 is the one that's a Main and Mason TIF district.
Yes.
That we think that's where we're checking to see confirming if there's an available balance there that we might be able to utilize for that particular area that we could make available to here. So.
Kind of a side note, Garrett, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but what the East Side desperately needs is a sports store, like a Dunham's or something. I mean, I just can't imagine someone hasn't jumped at that opportunity. And I'm sure you've heard that before, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a number of different folks that I'm talking with yet and other users that I want to see there as well. Of course, can't promise any of that necessarily, but that's definitely in the category of uses that has been desired and then to yes.
With what's going on here, and Garrett requesting the $300,000 up front, we can't even if we wanted to consider that, we can't, correct? Because we don't know if the TIDs have it.
I would say you could conditionally say if you wanted to recommend it, subject to a finance department saying that there would be an adequate balance available from 10 and a clear process how to make those funds available for this project, you could recommend that.
Well, I guess my concern is what if they're being used, does that TID it seems to me there's some more work that needs to be done if we really want to consider this.
Yeah, the upfront part is again, we agree, Kathy, that's in terms of, so certainly staff's position is certainly it's easier and cleaner from the city standpoint always to do the pay-go basis.
Right.
We certainly, again, but we do understand Mr. Bader's request in terms of the amount of investment he is making. And in fact, that this was an additional investment that was not scheduled. So he is a little tight on his capital stack. So anything that could be provided up front would certainly be helpful. And we certainly understand that. But there is certainly a financial exercise we need to go through internally to confirm whether or not that's even viable from the city's end at this point.
And is what Kathy's saying, though, does that need to be done first before we have this conversation?
Ideally, we would have that again, based on current practice, essentially we're asking for if there's interest in doing that, we could send, and it is viable, we could do that. Otherwise, the default would simply be to go to do the pay-as-you-go request. So they're not mutually exclusive for one another. If there's a preference and an interest in doing an upfront payment, we would proceed to see if that was viable. If it's not, we would default back to the pay-go.
So what we'd be approving today would be the developer obligations that you went through and the city obligations that list. And at this point in time, I think we'd recommend a pay-go, and if it's other than that, you come back to us.
That would be, and that would be fine. I mean, as part of that, we would prepare basically a development agreement on a pay-go basis, but at the same time, we would verify whether or not there would be something that we could be done up front. We could also we could bring that forward at the same time as we bring the development agreement forward.
Very good.
If there were to be an alternative that would want to be done, so
Yeah. There's a list of obligations on both the development and city side seems very fair to me. And
yeah, again, this is just the preliminary terms where staff's looking for direction in terms of what the RDA's primary interest is, and at that point, then we'll proceed with actually completing the full development agreement. So we didn't want to necessarily have to do the full exercise of preparing two agreements and so we wanted to make sure we had some direction before we move down that path.
Absolutely.
Chair, it's Alder Dorf.
Alder Dorf.
Thank you. So I actually wouldn't mind making the motion the opposite way, but whatever the group wants, I wouldn't mind saying that staff could look into seeing if that 300,000 is available. Yeah. And if not, we would default to the pay-go. That's the way I prefer to make that motion. Gary, you just said the opposite. So I
did.
I would like it to, the pay-go to be a default position. And if possible, to do the 300,000 up front if the money's available. Can you?
The way that I'm leaning to Barb with all the work that's been done, and assuming that those other TIDs don't have anything on their docket, if we can do.
And then if we can't, then we can default to that.
Melody, Bridget, give me your opinion.
I love this is Bridget. I love what Garrett's doing. He's like the commercial Chip and Joanna Gaines for Green Bay. So I'm a huge fan. But for me, upfront payments on behalf of the city doesn't feel fiscally prudent. That's just a red flag for me. But I otherwise support it as a pay-go. So I would look at the opposite of what Barb is saying. That's my feeling.
And we've had better luck with pay-goes than we have with some of these many years ago, if you will. But anyway.
I'm new to this, and I take a conservative approach when using city money. So,
I'm with you.
No, I'm with you there, Bridge, too. But the one thing that Garrett has proven is he's got a track record.
Absolutely.
And that's where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Because I normally wouldn't want to do this either.
Yeah. And I guess I would add, this is really the first ask, right?
Yes.
Right, correct in that for this development, which, we sat around talking about East Town Mall and what was going to happen there and who was going to step in and you know, take the reins on this. And so certainly appreciate that. So I would say that's kind of another factor in this is, you know, wasn't maybe part of the original plan. This property became available. He was willing to take that on as well. Looking like we've got another tenant going in there. Again, all positive things. It's not, I mean, obviously it's all relative, you know, not a huge ask in comparison to, you know, some of the others that we've seen. Again, I would lean towards if it was available in the TID, again, you know, we're not borrowing, you know, creating another financial burden, et cetera. If there's an opportunity for that, you know, I'd be willing to look at that.
I can be persuaded based on perspective and track record, but he seems a little sketchy to me. I don't know.
He doesn't even have his camera on.
Right. I hear he's got long hair and it's just, you know, riffraff.
Deb, you have an opinion? Debbie?
Yes, I agree that we should be looking to see if the money is in the other TED to be able to do the upfront, and if not, default to the pay-go. And it is because of the proven track record of the real estate development that he has had, and the amount of money that's been put into the project already, and additional new monies that will be coming in because of it.
So I will make that motion.
Do we need to return? Do we need to return to
regular order? Regular order.
Motion.
I'll make a motion to return to regular order business.
Melody.
Good catch, Melanie.
Second by Bridget.
Second by Kathy, I believe. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're back to regular order business. Now,
Okay. I move that we provide financing in the amount of $300,000 from TID 19, right? 10.
Yes.
10, sorry, from TID 10. And if that money is not available, then our default position would be $330,000 in a payroll. How confusing is that? Is that okay?
Okay.
That makes sense.
Provide the funding if it's available. And
Right.
then if it's not.
Yeah, that's it. Provided it's available.
Motion by Eldorf. Looking for a second.
Second, Bridget.
Bridget, second. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good comments by everybody. I really appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
And that's why I agree. It'd be ideally we would have it all signed, sealed, delivered, and kind of buttoned up here. But we figured it was prudent to kind of just bring it at this level of discussion to you guys for your feedback and see which direction you preferred. So thank you for the input, and it is appreciated by staff. Thank you.
Great comments. Number 9, consideration of possible action on requests from On Broadway Inc. to utilize 401 South Broadway for display of a temporary arts.
Yep, this is a common request that this body has done before. We have On Broadway has a sculpture piece that's related, I think being worked on as part of the Ignite market coming up this weekend, and it needs a place to place it after it is completed. They're asking if they could use 401 South Broadway as a temporary display of the art sculpture. This is the location here. So here's Broadway Street, here's Art Street. So Shipyard project down here. So this upper corner here is this where they were proposing to put this piece, which is this dragonfly, which is currently under construction. If you want to see the full completed piece, head down to the Ignite Market this coming weekend on Saturday. So again, the staff has really, this is pretty standard. We've done this several times with On Broadway. We certainly have no issues. So we're recommending the standard hold harmless agreement as presented, except for the note they're asking it to go to the end of December 20, up to the end of December 22, unless construction would be happening there earlier. So I think the current agreement in your packet says the end of this year, 21. They're asking to actually be able to leave it up through next summer unless there's construction happening on the site, which staff has no issues with.
Right. All right. Questions, comments? If
It's
not,
awesome.
I would make that motion. I'm pretty fond of the dragonfly that I am seeing built.
All right.
It's been over at the Neville Museum for at least a couple weeks, I think. Yeah. So.
I can look out my window and see it every day.
Yep.
Motion made by Bridget.
And I'll second.
Go ahead.
Barbara,
No, Kathy.
Kathy, second by Kathy.
anytime we can have our work out there, I just think that's beautifies our city.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Kathy. Any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Meeting, gang. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay, informational update on housing study. I'm sure that's Cheryl.
Yep, and basically we continue to work with developers on our various programs and our housing partners. Like I had mentioned at the last meeting, we have a number of committees that we all sit on and to work towards promoting the creation of housing in Green Bay, and we continue to do that. So
very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How can we get a copy of that housing study, Cheryl?
I think it's on the web, actually.
Is it?
I can
Okay.
send you the link.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it was a good, thorough study. Presented around 3-4 months ago, maybe a little more than that. Pretty thorough. Financial report, I had some questions, and Krista answered them, so I don't have any problems with the check register or the financial report. Is there anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Nope. Director's report, Neil, please.
All right, that's me here. Let me grab my screen here again just to throw this up here. Obviously, KI Center bond refinancing has been proceeding. The reason we're going to be asking you for a special meeting on October 19th is because we need final approval of those bond documents, and we're doing that the same night as council. So there's going to be going to the RDA for approval and going to the council right afterwards to get the bond documents out there. We've had very positive feedback from our bond counsel as well as from the potential bond seller. Rating was, we actually started off with Moody's and then we went to S&P. Actually got a little bit, like a 2 points better review from S&P. So we're going with them as our rating agency. Looking at possibly saving, I believe the last number I heard was around $8.25 million to the taxpayer by doing this refinancing. So pretty astonishing number. It was actually certainly came out of crisis when we were trying to figure out exactly how we were going to be making our bond payments here this coming year. As we looked into refinancing, this path became forward. So we're very excited about having that. So it'll be a very short meeting on 5:30. Alderdorf will figure out how to get you set up at City Hall. If that's convenient for you, we'll figure out how to do that so you can hit both of them. But should be very relatively quick meeting in action. And Gary, I will need to get a signature from you if you're in City Hall for the meeting. That's great. You and I can sit right next to each other if you want to. Otherwise, I can track you down and get a signature from you after the meeting later that night if that works. Either one would be fine. So, so that's good news on that one. We're excited. All the other governing entities who are involved in that have approved it and done the approvals they need. So it's simply down to a final approval of the resolutions by the RDA and then by City Council then on the 19th. So. We're going to 216 Military Avenue. This is the Shopko building, H.J. Martin. We had been having multiple discussions with them regarding the temporary use of the Shopko building. We're having a little bit of loggerheads there for a couple weeks there. We weren't seeing eye to eye on some things. So we were prepared to kind of just move forward with if you remember, this body actually reviewed kind of general preliminary terms to proceed with a development agreement to allow them the temporary use and then come up with some conceptual plans on the redevelopment of the rest of the site. We weren't seeing eye to eye on some of those things. So in terms of timing and they're wanting their approvals to proceed with their temporary use, we had actually recommended that they would just go ahead and proceed with their zoning request. Upon doing that, we actually got a call from their land use attorney and had an excellent meeting. He said, no, we definitely want to do the development agreement. Let's get that back on track. Let's push that back forward. We want to keep that moving forward with that. So the good news is his attorney, I think, was very much in agreement with what staff had proposed. Obviously, we need to work out specific language on that, but we are back and working towards a development agreement, as well as the temporary planned unit development for that particular site. So we're hopefully going to be having to burn the midnight oil a little bit to keep that on track, but we're excited that it seems to be, we're both kind of swimming in the same direction at this point. So it was a good conversation. Just a quick update on WPS. We have met briefly with the developer, with base companies, in terms of the folks who have the development option on that. We are looking at just fairly basic, kind of trying to get our arms around what we think some of the environmental issues are going to be, what some of the street connections might be if we want to reestablish some of the street grid in that area. Are there areas of key infrastructure that we need to be aware of to start kind of basically setting the table in terms of what the planning for that site is going to need to be. Working on providing some direction to their consultants, WPS's consultants, related to where we think the environmental work of the site's going to be. I think they were hoping that there was going to be some areas we said that maybe we would do something other than residential on, and they said, well, at this point, we think the whole area has potential for residential, so we think the environmental cleanup approach probably needs to address that. Some areas they might just be able to pave over and cap and leave alone. We think staff's recommendation is that guys, without seeing specific development plans for this site at this point, we think really anything on that area could have a residential component to it. So probably needs to be cleaned up accordingly. So we're working with the developer to send that note over to WPS essentially.
Ownership has not taken place yet, as far as
no, I believe it's more of just an option at this point. They have their due diligence in terms of, I don't know exactly. I think it might be a year worth of time for them to actually, review zoning, confirm the environmental. There's a lot of work to be done on that site. It is a large, complex redevelopment site for sure. So there will be plenty of work that needs to be done on that before that kind of comes forward. But hopefully at some point, if they have kind of a concept plan they want to share, I think they're certainly interested in having some preliminary conversations with the RDA in terms of just kind of swapping some ideas and taking a look at what they might be looking at. So hopefully we have something here in the next couple of months, at least as a concept that we could bring forward and share in terms of what particular areas might actually be something that they're looking at. And I think the other thing that's going to be important is certainly the overall phasing of the project. Where are they particularly going to start their redevelopment? What buildings are going to stay? What might end up being knocked down, and kind of looking at what the schedule over time for those may end up being. So we're excited to see somebody moving forward on that, and are cautiously optimistic that we're going to end up with a good project there right now. So the one I think Bridget had mentioned earlier, Fort the Rail Yard, staff continues to reach out to them and try to ascertain exactly where they're at on their kind of their reassessment of their use mix. Folks from RDA and Plan Commission Council had all essentially approved a kind of more of a mixed use building at this location, and essentially was including some first floor commercial retail in this area. And it was actually being funded primarily by more of an opportunity zone funding. At that point, for some reason that funding disappeared. They've already started construction. Folks already have seen the elevator towers that are already constructed on the site. Construction has since stopped. Site is actually in pretty poor condition. We've actually had to call over there a couple times. There's weeds. There's other things that it's really an unkept kind of situation at this point. We do know that the TWG is in process of probably looking for some WIDA tax credits. Bridget and I had a quick conversation here a couple days ago on whether or not, are we excited about, more affordable housing units in this particular area. We think as long as they kind of adjust to some other different income levels, we think that might be okay. Again, until we actually see what they're proposing at this point, we really don't have a specific thing to react to. So they've been a little tough to get a hold of. Mayor Genrich has actually asked us to set up a meeting with them to try to get an update on exactly what's going on. And I think part of his recommendation is certainly going to be that update also needs to be provided to this body. Hopefully in November, in fact, is what we're shooting for at our November 9th meeting. So we'd like to have them come to this body and kind of present an update as far as where they're actually at in terms of not only pursuing financing and tax credits, but what exactly they are looking at doing possibly in terms of changing the uses on the site. Both staff and base companies, kind of the parent developer for this area, have remained pretty adamant that we want to see that first floor remain activated, that we'd still like to see commercial uses there. We understand the market's pretty tough for some of that right now. So we're interested in, if there's some flexibility we can do, more live work kinds of things, or some other ideas, we're certainly willing to entertain those. But I think at this point, the original plan was still to maintain some first floor activation in this particular building. So right now, that is still staff's position until we see something otherwise that we have to evaluate. It will probably remain our position. So.
If I remember correctly, actually the original plan was more high-end housing.
Yeah, they were definitely market rate units, Gary, and exactly. I think that was kind of that we were more comfortable with that simply because not only from a TIF standpoint, but as Bridget had mentioned too, in terms of just mix of units for the area, it was a good combination there. We weren't concentrating one type of housing really much more in that area. Certainly going towards more affordable certainly raises some concerns that staff certainly shares with what Bridget had mentioned earlier. So again, I'd love to say, I knew exactly what we were going to recommend, and but we need to know what's coming in first before we're really ready to commit to anything. So
absolutely, thank you.
And are they going to? I think you had talked about this, Neil. Like, are their fines going to be implemented? I mean, I'm keeping the scrap metal, keep people off the site as much as I can. Just one woman trying to fight it off. It's a little hard. They actually stole fiber optic cables, and I got them. I totally, and it wasn't even my fiber optic cable. So
yeah.
Doing my duty.
What we're talking about is obviously one thing staff has had the internal conversation on, and I mentioned this to Bridget on our call the other day, is obviously we've noted certainly the poor condition of the site. It looks horrible. Certainly just from a construction standpoint, adding the weeds and things on top of that. Certainly doing some enforcement in terms of site condition is probably something that's pending. We're going to probably wait for meeting with the mayor to have a conversation with them before we issue that, but that is certainly something that my inspection teams have on their radar screen. In addition, we're actually probably looking at, worst case scenario, what happens if, we probably are at a point where if they're in violation of their agreement, and which I think they are at this point, they're beyond their timing on their development agreement. We may have to require them to actually remove the site and return it back to its pre-development stage, which really nobody wants to see. But if they can't show that they're really ready to move forward and to perform on something on this, I think we all just need to be honest with ourselves and decide, let's get another developer in there to try to do something on that particular site. If and when they can't, we're certainly going to leave it up to them to try to show us they have a path forward. But at this point, there's certainly significant concerns on their either their ability or their desire or their plan to move forward on the project at this point. So we've sat here pretty much a full construction season with little or no activity, and that's been frustrating, I'm sure, for them as well as for us. So I think we just need to have an honest conversation. So certainly going to start off with the mayor's office and a couple staff, but our recommendation, I think the mayor's desire would be to have them come do an update to the RDA in terms of exactly what their plans are.
Good.
So hopefully in November. So those are my main updates. I'm certainly available for any questions.
Just, I apologize, Neil, you probably mentioned this. Who is the developer on that site?
TWG is the name of the company. Yep.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember which one it was. And, as we talked earlier about, giving praise and kudos to, good developers and rewarding them, we should also keep in mind those that are letting us down, right? So
yeah,
want to make sure we mentioned that name publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in TWG, and they've got quite a repertoire in terms of other projects that they've done. So for some reason, we're not sure exactly why this one is holding up the way it is at this point. It was one of the reasons why we need to have a meeting and they need to communicate that to us, what's going on. So it's been frustrating for staff, and I'm sure for them as well. So
excellent. Mr. Mayor, are you aboard?
I am.
You are.
I'm here.
Very good.
Yeah, just thanks to everybody for a good meeting, productive as all. Appreciate all the comments and decisions made. In terms of updates here, not a whole lot other than it's budget season. So it's a busy time at City Hall and for Alderdorf as chair of our finance committee. So just wanted to flag a couple of events for the RDA. We are going to have a couple of town hall meetings coming up, one on October 21st and the other on October 26th, town halls with related to our city budget and also the American Rescue Plan Act to solicit some more in-person input on that spending plan. So both events start at 5:30. The one on the 21st is over at NWTC, and the one on the 26th is at UWGB. So of course, one east side, one west side. That's how we do things here in Green Bay. But also both available online. So if people would like to attend virtually, that's also an option for folks. We do have the survey with respect to ARPA that's still live on our site and will continue to be so until October 21st. So if you haven't filled it out yourself, I would certainly encourage you to hop on and do that, and feel free to share it within your networks, because we're already north of 700 respondents on that survey, which is, I think, a really strong number. Probably the highest we've ever had for a survey of this type. But wanting to get to 1,000, I don't know if that's realistic or not, but trying to get there. So would appreciate you all spreading the word as far and as wide as you can.
Very good. Any questions for the mayor, Neil, Cheryl, the rest of the staff?
I did have one. I have one comment that I just wanted to throw out. I met the mayor of Provo, Utah this weekend. Oh, nice. And she loved the rail yard development, by the way. So just got really excited about it. So this is exactly what cities should be doing. And also we have an open invitation to meet her out there if we ever want to. So Eric, you guys can think about that.
Excellent. Well, I've gone downhill skiing one time, so I'm really qualified, I think, to head out to Utah.
Let's do
Mayor,
it.
The coal piles don't count, Mayor. The coal piles don't count.
All right.
But she's the mom of a Packer player, and I'm like, I have no interest in the Packer player. Let me talk to the mayor.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, we'd love to connect with her.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to adjourn. Everybody wants to stay here.
No moved. Second.
And all the favors saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.